Jon Stewart is going to debate an Oklahoma State Senator, Nathan Dahm. Will he win this debate? I don't know, but let's see if he does.
I believe the right to keep and bear arms.
It's about
shall
guns,
not be
by the
infringed.
way.
That's the one right that's listed in the Constitution that uses that very specific affirmative language, shall not be
Well, it's
infringed.
also the one right that uses the phrase well-regulated.
Correct, when it's talking about the militia and the state.
By the way, just for clarity's sake,
Yeah.
I'm not against the Second Amendment. I don't want to ban guns. But you're saying more guns makes us more safe.
Yes.
All right, after all that technical difficulties, I'm going to break down, see if I agree with certain elements. To kind of my stance regarding the Second Amendment. I did like a whole podcast episode regarding it as well. I think the Second Amendment should definitely exist. I think guns are cool. But I have reservations.
I believe the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the one right that's listed in the Constitution that uses that very specific affirmative language, shall not be infringed.
Shall not be infringed. I wonder if they're going to reference it later on. I feel like something that should be mentioned is regarding the Second Amendment, because I did go over the entire Bill of Rights for a podcast episode, and that's in reference to the Second Amendment. There's two interpretations, and that's the right to kind of bear arms in reference to protecting yourself as an individual, or the second interpretation is the right to bear arms as a state in reference to having a state militia to combat against the federal government. It inherently doesn't say anything about an individual should have the right to keep a gun just to keep a gun, right? But there's two interpretations regarding it. The verbatim vernacular references having a militia more specifically, but people have interpreted it, okay, yeah, everybody should have a gun as an individual. So just look at the Second Amendment itself. Read what it says. Like it's not that complicated.
Well, it's also the one right that uses the phrase well-regulated.
Correct, when it's talking about the militia and the state.
By the way, just for clarity's sake,
Yeah.
I'm not against the Second Amendment. I don't want to ban guns. But you're saying more guns makes us more safe.
Yes.
So when we got 400 million guns in the country, we had an increase and gun deaths went up. So when exactly does this curve hit that takes it down? Would 1 billion guns do it?
Let's just run those numbers, 400 million, 50,000. You're talking about less than a fraction of not even 1%, of 100th of a percent.
But it goes up, not down. So your argument is backwards.
But if you want, okay, so let's come up with a solution. Okay, so one of the issues,
Damn. Point Jon Stewart right off the bat. He says your logic is backwards. Like, all right, let me change the topic of discussion. Point Jon Stewart.
contributing factor, again, I believe it's the individual that is the problem.
So your solution to that is give them more guns.
I believe the individual is a problem, so we should give them more guns. What does he have to say to that? Senator, you're a senator, by the way.
I'm saying that because people are the problem, we need to look at the problems that those people are facing and how do we address it.
But you've removed the ability for the state to do that.
No, because you're...
If you don't have background checks and you don't have registration and permitting, how do you know who has a problem in terms of the people who you're giving a gun to?
Do you want to talk about the background checks first, or do you want to talk about solutions first?
I want to talk about what you're doing is you're bringing chaos to order.
So the idea, so this state senator has indicated that the people in terms of the individual are the problem when it comes to guns. So when it comes down to it, as a person, if we go down by that logic, right? Should we allow any person to have any type of substance, any type of weaponry? It's crazy how people are the problem. But for example, when it comes to cars, right? We put more and more security and checks in place for referencing cars because we know that there are dumb people who will use cars inappropriately, right? We put more security measures and we put more checks when it comes to driving because we know there's people who are dumb enough to drink and drive, to smoke and drive, right? So we put these security measures because we know people are dumb. I agree. People are stupid. People are bad. So we do that in reference to item plus people, how they use the item. So the regulation is threefold all around to make sure that the overall consensus of how the thing is used is as safe as possible. There's a reason why we don't allow people to use certain drugs, because the individual plus drug could be very dangerous for society, very dangerous for the person. There's a reason why we don't allow people to use, I don't know, bombs, right? It's illegal to have a bomb. It's illegal to search up how to create a bomb. It's a reason why we don't allow people to have tanks, right? So this is a very disingenuous thing to say, because at the end of the day, we both know you don't allow people to use and do whatever they want. You regulate everything people do. But when it comes to guns, that's the one thing that you think that they should not be regulated. Make it make sense.
Well,
I don't
it's your
think people
subjective
actually
opinion that
realize
it's bringing chaos to order.
It's not my subjective opinion. We have
is?
50,000 gun-related deaths. That's not a subjective opinion.
Okay, so
that's dead people. Let me back up for a second. In every other place in your life, you want to bring order.
That's what I
But
said.
guns are the outlier for you.
Facts, John
with
Stewart.
immigration. You want registration, maybe a wall, maybe not a wall. Why do you want that?
Well, one of the reasons is because the fentanyl crisis.
Right.
I mean, okay, but
You don't know when it's coming across. So what do you
but
do?
the fentanyl crisis is twice what the
You're not engaging what he's saying. You're not engaged with what he's saying. But let me
gun
continue.
death crisis is.
Okay, so until the gun crisis gets
No.
to the fentanyl level,
Not until it-
you don't want to bring order.
No, not until it. But
do you
if we're
see
gonna
my
talk-
point?
If we're going to talk about protecting lives, that's a larger issue in America
Yes.
than guns is. If we're talking about individual lives
Yes.
of ways that they can be protected, loss of
That's crazy. Oh, I would love to have a debate with a conservative. I would love to have a debate with this freaking senator. I wonder if Jon Stewart's going to bring it up. Because why don't you just bring up trans and LGBT issues? I'm one of those people that prefers kids not to be subjected to all these drugs and hormones. But the percentage, the number of kids that are becoming trans, the number of trans people in general is very, very, very low. But we care about that, right? I'm very curious as Jon Stewart
life
brings
in
that up.
America. There's loss of life through fentanyl. There's loss of life through obesity. The obesity crisis in America costs 6 times the number of lives.
What do you do
as
about the
guns.
obesity
Right,
crisis?
and you're the guy saying, you know what would help this? Ice cream.
Ice cream.
So you know what would help the problem that we're facing with firearms?
What?
The fatherlessness crisis that we have in America.
Yo, ain't no way. Ain't no way. You know what would help guns? More fathers. That is the dumbest thing. This guy's a senator. He's a senator. He literally said fatherlessness. Oh my God. Oh my God.
If you look at the statistics,
Right. Yeah, they're
80
dying from gun deaths.
80%
Yeah.
of school shooters either came from a broken or fatherless home. If
So you
look
would say no
comparative-
guns for fatherless homes?
No, that's not what I would say. I would say that fathers need to be more engaged.
How do you do that?
So let's
Crime with
let's
a
put
firearm if they don't have a father in
Let's
the
put more
home.
resources into areas that are poverty-stricken. All for it.
And into fatherlessness, and that's something that we're doing
why
in
would-
Oklahoma.
Are you doing that? Are you putting more money into poverty impoverished homes? I would love to dive into that question further, but I know it's about guns. I would love to, because one of my issues is that these communities are so bad. But okay.
Guns, are you against bringing order?
I'm not against bringing order.
You are. You're also making it less safe for cops and for people. When the police go to a domestic call, it's the most dangerous call they can go on. In your world, if they knew that there were firearms in the house, that's a safer call. Is that what you're saying?
No, because police.
Because why?
Because police treat every situation as a potential.
But more guns makes us safer. So why don't, when the police go to a house filled with guns, why don't they breathe a sigh of relief knowing that this Second Amendment that shall not be infringed is being exercised so fruitfully in this home?
Are you familiar with the 39-year-old woman?
Okay, so before he goes into a rant that probably doesn't make any sense, I don't agree at this point, right? Because at the end of the day, I don't want to get rid of the Second Amendment. I'm sure Jon Stewart doesn't either. One of the safest places a gun I mean, the only like safe place a person can have a gun really is in their home, right? To prevent any potential break-in, correct? So like that's something that will never go away. So there's really no point in bringing up the analogy of a police should feel safer going to a home that's filled with guns, right? No, I guess the hope for a person who is well, in the situation, whether it's not a break-in, so I'm assuming this won't be a break-in scenario, because a break-in scenario, the person might have their gun, might also call the police. Very tough situation to deal with, but you probably something that, you know, can be resolved, hopefully, by either the cop or the person with the gun. The situation that might be a lot more threatening would be a case of, like you said, domestic, not abuse, but domestic altercations in the home, with people in the home having a rough, very violent stuff going on, and they have guns in the house, where you don't know who's in the right in this situation, but you know something is going on. So now the cop has to go to a situation where he knows there's guns and he knows that people are very, very agitated and very, very emotional. That would be a very dangerous situation. There's really no way to fix that, though, because you can't take the guns out of their place. But there's different scenarios you can go with that in terms of like criminals and all that stuff. But I'm not going down that. I just don't inherently think there's a solution to take guns out of people's home, because I don't think that should ever be allowed for America specifically.
In New Jersey.
I'm familiar with a ton of anecdotes.
Yeah,
I'm asking you a simple question.
This is not an anecdote,
When
John.
the police
This actually happened.
go to a house,
She had a restraining order on her ex-boyfriend.
Yo, Senator, do you know what an anecdote is? What do you mean this is not an anecdote? You know what an anecdote is? Senator Nathan Dawn, you know what an anecdote is? This man said it's not an anecdote. What the fuck?
I can run through
I know, we can both run through
hundreds and
that.
hundreds of examples of women killed by their domestic partners by guns that were not taken away through the lessening of red flag
Maybe I don't know what an anecdote is. Maybe I'm tripping.
laws. You're pivoting
But the
to
knives-
anecdotes.
No, this is not anecdotes.
What the police say.
Okay, let me look up what an anecdote is, because I must be tripping. What is an anecdote? A short, amusing, or interesting story about a real incident or person. Nathan Dom, do you know what an anecdote is? He's a
If we
senator,
had
by the
gun
way.
registration, if we were able to track purchases, they have a technology that every bullet would be stamped with an individual like a fingerprint. If we had an ATF that wasn't defunded, we would be able to enforce gun laws more effectively, and we would be able to solve gun crimes more effectively. You're against all of that.
Because the person is the threat, not the firearm, not the knife.
I get
That is the dumbest. I am so tired of that argument moving forward. Because I don't understand it. I don't understand the argument that only in the situations with guns that the person is the problem, not the guns. And my thing is, I agree that especially with mass shootings, it's more of a mental illness issue. But just because it's more of a person issue, because I do inherently agree it's more of a person issue, does not mean that we should not regulate the item the person is using, right? For example, when it comes to cyberbullying, the person who is cyberbullying is the problem. But we put regulations, we put report button, we put a bunch of things. If you're getting cyberbullied, you report them, they're kicked off. It's a person problem, but that person is using an item inappropriately.
it.
The person, the individual is the one that is the concern
Right,
here.
but you don't want anything that could help law enforcement or society determine whether or not a person is a good guy with a gun or a bad guy with a gun.
Most
The
even law
registry
enforcement.
would allow you to have much more effective background checks. So I don't understand why you won't just admit that you are making it harder for police to manage the streets by allowing all of these guns to go out without permits, without checks, and without background stuff. Why is that hard? Why can't you just stand by that?
Because that's not what I'm doing. I'm defending the individual's right to keep and bear arms.
That's a different argument.
Okay, but
you
we
may
keep
do.
trying-
Here's what I'm saying. You want to say I'm a Second
People are-
Amendment purist and I'm making it safer. You're not. You're making it more chaotic, and that's not a matter of opinion. That's the truth.
That is a matter of opinion, John.
But why take away their tools?
Because certain of their tools that they're using would be infringements upon the people's right to keep and bear arms, upon their constitutional rights, upon due
So you're
process,
saying
upon other things.
that registering is an infringement?
Yes.
Okay. Is voting?
So I hate this so much because the Second Amendment says it does not say all this stuff that people keep on alluding to keep and bear arms. If you want to have a firearm to protect yourself, that's fine. If you want to have a firearm because the federal government may go against you, that's fine. But that doesn't inherently mean taking away your guns. What's crazy to me is that people jabber on about individual rights, but then are so hypocritical on how those individual rights are used. The purity of the 10 Amendments is there, but has been modified and altered throughout history with constant changes based on the times and the era, that purity wise none of these amendments are purely what they were, right? The First Amendment, right? Freedom of speech, freedom of press, but there are certain things you can't say. There are certain things you can't do. Is that a bad thing? No. Because contextually, having the ability to say and do whatever you want is anarchy. Contextually, having a gun, a weapon that is meant to hurt, protect, or kill, out in society with no rules, anarchy. The amendment, there's an amendment over there. I don't want to go through all 10 amendments. I'm
Voting
going
a
to keep
right.
on going.
It's a right for citizens, yes.
Do you have to do anything to do it?
Yes.
What do you have to do?
It depends on the state.
What do you have to do?
Sometimes you have to be at least 18 years old.
What do you have to do?
And in
going.
some places you have to have a government issued ID.
What do you have to? You have to
You have to be on the voter rolls.
register. You have to register. So you have to register to a right. Is that an infringement?
Does the right to voting say shall not be infringed?
Oh, so this is just a semantic argument now.
No, it's not.
You believe voting rights can be infringed because it doesn't say specifically
Is it an-
shall not be infringed.
Is it an infringement upon a 17-year-old's right to vote, since they don't have that right to vote?
No.
Oh, it's not an infringement on them?
No, absolutely not.
Why not?
Because you're the one making the argument, not me. I'm saying even rights have responsibilities, and that within those responsibilities
Responsibility.
are
Yes.
responsibilities and order. Otherwise, it's chaotic. I'll go you one further. You want to ban drag show readings to children.
Oh, he's going into the LGBT stuff. Let's see what this conservative does.
Yes.
Why?
Why?
What are you protecting?
Why can we prohibit children from voting, those under 18 from voting?
Why are you
but
banning?
also that
Is that free speech? Are you infringing on that performer's free speech?
they can continue to exercise their free speech, just not in front of a child?
Why?
Because the government does have a responsibility to protect.
I'm sorry?
The government does have a responsibility in certain instances to
What's
protect
the
children.
leading cause of death amongst children in this country? And I'm going to give you a hint. It's not drag show readings to children.
Correct, yes.
The Jon Stewart's cooking this senator, bro.
So what is it?
I'm presuming you're going to say it's firearms.
No, I'm not going to say it like it's an opinion. That's what it is. It's firearms. More than cancer, more than car accidents. And what you're telling me is you don't mind infringing free speech to protect children from this amorphous thing that you think of. But when it comes to children that have died, You don't give a flying fuck to stop that because that shall not be infringed. That is hypocrisy at its highest order.
Jesus, this man got cooked. I can't watch the Apple TV. I wish I could watch more of it. The way he connected his gun control argument free drive shows was pretty darn impressive. Damn. Damn. Sheer brutality. Damn. Let's go look up the Second Amendment real quick. The shall not be infringed. I looked it up, but you just got to refresh yourself. What does the Second Amendment say? Let's change the screen real quick. What does the Second Amendment say? Verbatim. Back. Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. Right? The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. When you look at the context of this full statement, there's a reason why there's two interpretations for it. The first one, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, a militia, free state, state militia, the rights of the people to keep and bear arms, the people of the state keeping arms, shall not be infringed. The first interpretation is the state having the ability to protect themselves against the federal government or against any other foreign body. Obviously, this is due to contextually states having the ability to fight against their oppressors, right? The, English monarchy, for example, when inherently before it wasn't a collective, it wasn't a country, it was a collection of states. So that's why the first interpretation is something that is based on states having the power to form a militia in response to the federal government. But the interpretation has changed to more of an individual level to, people as an individual being able to keep and bear arms for their protection. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with people as an individual to keep, have protection. But they're changing the interpretation to fit something that is contextual by the era, because how guns are so intertwined with society. It's, of course, more and more people should have the ability to protect themselves at an individual level. Makes sense using context. But when you're picking and choosing which context you want to use to make your argument and using that as your baseline and as your substance behind why you want to have no regulation on guns, I think that's absolutely foolish. Personally, I think that's foolish.